Hey guys, Thatnub here. Welcome to the second part in our series about putting up my solar panels. Today we're going to do the installation. First thing I'm going to do is start off with my wires, and this is an 8-gauge wire, and get some wire cutters, and we're going to chop off a little bit of that plastic covering there and show some bare wire. These wire cutters only go down to 10 gauge, so I'm going to have to be a little careful with them. There we go. Now I'm going to do this to all of the other wires. The next thing we're going to do is connect these battery terminals to one end of the wire. Now, they didn't have any 8-gauge when we were down at the auto parts store. This is 4, so we're going to have to crimp them pretty hard. And let's see. Yep, that's on there pretty well. Good job. Now I'm going to do this to the negative wire as well. I now have both ends of the wire that go from the charge controller to the batteries taken care of. Now we have to put the MC4 connectors onto the wires that run into the house from the solar panels. Now first we have our female MC4 cable, which takes the male pin. And it's the one that's kind of crimped down a little bit. We're going to open this up, put this through our wire, let that be, stick this into here. Now this is 8-gauge wire, so it is barely going to fit in this MC4 cable. I mean, just barely too. Now we're going to take our crimpers and we're going to bend down one end of this and then the other end. And then put it into here and crimp it. That's pretty solid on there. Now we're going to put the male pin into the female end until you hear it snap. Now it's locked in there. Then we bring down the little gasket and the cap. And screw it on until there's no more gap here. Do that to the other wire, and then we're set. Now we need to find a way to get the wires from outside to inside. I am going to drill a hole in this piece of plywood that I am using for my temporary air conditioning system. So now we have a hole for the wires to go out. From outside the house, we are going to take our wires from the solar panels and push them through the hole that we made until we can reach the charge controller. So I finally have the solar panels out for their first visit into the world. And since we're taking them camping with us, I just kind of propped them up on this pallet with some plywood there. And we're going to connect all of these wires into the house. Now I have 2 wires coming from each solar panel, a positive and a negative for each. That's why I have these Y cables here. And I'm going to connect the Y cables into the MC4 cables here. And then connect these into the house. So give me the positive. That's my red wire here. And then the negative, hand it to me. I'm going to connect the negative right there. And now, if we go inside, we should have some kind of solar power going on. Let's go find out. Some of you will remember that I had the batteries for my battery backup system underneath this here, and I had the inverter up here. But I wanted to mount the inverter and everything to the wall, so I've moved my batteries underneath this chair here in the closet. And I still have positive to positive and negative to negative. And I have a wire coming from this positive side here and the negative coming from that side back there. And they're all running over to the inverter and charge controller that I've already mounted to the wall. When you are plugging in your charge controller, you want to plug in the battery power first. That way, your charge controller knows what kind of power voltage that you have your battery set to. This charge controller can do 12 or 24 volts, so we want to let it figure out that it is a 12 volt system. And you can see it light up, and it will figure out it's on 12 volts. It doesn't really matter what you plug in next. We are going to plug in the panels. For most systems you see online, this is the end of the installation for the charge controller. I don't understand that. This is a load setting. Basically, you take the power in from the panels, out to the batteries, back in and out to your inverter. This charge controller is designed to let you know if your batteries are too low and to shut off the load to your inverter. Now I want to take the lazy route for this, so I want my charge controller to control the charge, to let the batteries turn off if they're too low, which I think is set in here for like 10.7 volts, something like that. About 50% of my battery power. And last wire here, we might get a spark. Very exciting. Oh, no spark. There you go. Charge controller is set up. Here is the system all up and running. You can see that we have power coming from the solar panels to the batteries. The batteries are happy, happy, happy. And we have power going from the batteries to the load, which right now is my cell phone plugged into the inverter. Currently sitting at 13.1 volts. It is 23 degrees Celsius in my office. The panels are bringing in about 11-ish amps, depending on the clouds right now this morning. Yeah, they're just kind of fluctuating all over the place. We are currently using 0.3 amps to charge my cell phone. We took the system camping with us last week, and we brought in 458 amp hours of power from the panels and used 519 amp hours from the batteries. Right here is for the voltage to turn the solar panels off so we don't overcharge the batteries. This is when the batteries are turned off, where it turns back on once we get back up to 12.6 volts. And here, when we get down to 10.7 volts, it will turn the charge controller off, the load off, so we stop using the battery power. It's on a 24-hour system. You can set this one for different lengths of time, but I just leave it on 24 hours. And there we go. Well, that's all I have for this video. As always, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, check out the website, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Wow. I have to crimp down on them with a hammer.